Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to make some burgers with fried onion strings, fried green tomatoes, and some home fries. So just like a pretty simple kind of delicious comfort food dinner. So let's start by getting our home fries up, but look at this cool tomato, or potato, not tomato. It's a heart. I just think he's kind of cool. So we're gonna get our potatoes up and ready for our home fries here. And I'm gonna actually do fry cuts today. Sometimes I do like potato wedges or slices, but we're gonna do actual fry cuts for it. So just kind of long, skinny rectangles. Now we're gonna do these in the oven. We're not gonna do them fried because I only have so much frying room. And I have a really good oven home fry. So we'll get these. The trick is just to try to make sure all your potatoes are roughly around the same size, so they cook up all pretty evenly. Okay, let's get this guy done. And then we're gonna dress these with some olive oil, a little bit of flour, Lowry seasoned salt, some onion powder. And then I'm gonna also throw in a little bit of panko breadcrumbs to give them an extra crunch. There we go. This guy's a little fat, so we're gonna even him out. And then we will work on making our dreads, which we will use for both our fried green tomatoes and our onion straws. We're kind of doing the same base for it. That way it just simplifies it. We can kind of cook them up at the same time. And now off to do the heart potato. I really like this. Everyone finds like a president-shaped potato or like some crazy like Mickey Mouse one. I got a heart, so I'm happy with that. There was like, I read that story about the person who like found their wedding ring that lost like 30 years prior, and it was like growing up between a carrot. And I'm like, that'd be pretty cool. Pull that up one day and find it. Here, I'm gonna cut off this little edge here. It looks like we got a little bit of a bruise on it. And then let's get these last little bit of our home fries on it. And now I leave my skins on, but if you don't like skins at all, you can completely peel them off. I find when you cut them in the French fry shape, you get very little skin on it, even if you get an edge piece. So they're not one that you feel like it's so much of a skin. Just that one get cut down. Let's cut it a little bit thinner. And then here, get our last ones up. And then we'll get to tossing them up and ready for them to go out on our baking sheet. So for this, we're gonna spread it out. Just make sure you break all your little potato pieces here, but we've got our big fry on here. And we're gonna be baking these in the oven on our air fryer setting at 400. And these will, fry up while we're cooking everything else. So we're gonna put a good amount of olive oil in here, probably about like 2 tablespoons, enough to coat everyone, but it doesn't need to be like glistening in oil. We're gonna use some Lowry seasoned salt, a good shake over it. Well, I always kind of know by the color of it, but you're gonna use probably like 1.5 teaspoons. We're gonna use a little bit of onion powder, which will give a great savory flavor to these as well. And when I think about these fries, I think of like steak fries, the seasoned steak fries that you get at a restaurant that are just so delicious. These are kind of like in that same ballpark. We're gonna put in about 2 tablespoons of flour. You don't need a whole lot of flour, but this helps make kind of this nice little cakey base to it. And then we're gonna throw in some panko breadcrumbs for just a little extra crunch, which I find is delicious. You don't need a whole lot, like 1/4 cup. You could also use Parmesan cheese to give you that little bit of that crispy crunch to it. So we're gonna get in here with our hands and we're gonna just coat these all up with that nice kind of spiced mixture. And the trick is just to make sure everyone gets coated up. And the oil will mix with the flour and the spices, and as you can see, it almost looks like we've battered our fries here. Here we go. Okay, beautiful. Now we're gonna place these out on our baking sheet. Got a great big baking sheet right here. I'm gonna dump it out, and then we'll just make sure none of them are like resting on top of each other so that they all get a good crisp up. So we should be able to just spread them out. And then again, try to prevent any from, resting too much on each other. It's okay if they've got a little bit touching, but to be able to give them as much space as possible is gonna give you the best French fry, because it will allow it to really crisp up on all sides around. There we go. And this is why I like using my big sheet and a half, because I can get everything on one baking sheet, but this allows me to have more room. Okay. Wash my hands, and then we can go pop these in the oven.
You have a question? Can you go over the seasoning one more time?
Yes. So we put in about, I want to say like a teaspoon and a half of Lowry seasoned salt, about 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 2 tablespoons of flour, and about 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and about a 1/4 cup of panko breadcrumbs. And we toss them all in it, so it kind of makes a little almost like a breading paste on it, which will be delicious. I'm gonna set my timer here for about 18 minutes, just kind of check up on them, see if they're done. It takes around that, between 15 to 20 minutes. I turn my temperature down, so this should take a little bit longer. A lot of times I do it at 425 for about 15 minutes, but I want them to sit a little bit longer because we've got a bit more time we need to make up. Okay, before we do our onions, I'm going to cut up my tomatoes here. So I've got some green tomatoes here for our fried green tomatoes. And then we're gonna be making some not smash burgers, I always call them that, but they're regular burgers. We'll cook those up as well, so we can put our onion straws, our fried green tomatoes on it, and just have like this really delicious, but comfortable dinner. For our tomatoes here, I went out and picked my copious amounts of green tomatoes that I have outside. You want green tomatoes for this because regular tomatoes will be too juicy. So I'm just cutting nice, good, thick slices here, but you want to cut the top and the bottom off because you really want that fleshy base for it.
You have a question? If you don't have an air fryer, what do you set the oven to?
So if you have convection bake on it, I would do convection bake at 425. If your oven doesn't have the convection setting, do a traditional bake at like 435, 450, and for about 10 minutes on there. Essentially, air fryer works just like a convection. It just blows that air around so it stays nice and hot. Okay, get these all sliced up here for it. Ooh. There we go. And say, these tomatoes are much more difficult to cut than a regular tomato because you can't get a good hold on them for it, and they're firm. There we go. Okay, we've got our tomatoes here. This one was in the process of somewhat turning to a yellow heirloom tomato, but maybe when we come back from vacation, they'll be nice and ready. So we've got our tomatoes here, and now let's get our onions kind of cut up. We're gonna just cut off, this is a really big, there we go. And we're gonna kind of cut here. And then I'm going to cut my onions in half, and because I don't do onion rings. So onion rings are typically battered, and what I'm doing is a hand dredging on it. So I have like onion straws, or like the nice thin onion strings that they put on burgers. That's the onion base that we're going for today. And they're one of my family's favorite on there. So we're gonna cut my onions, nice and small for it. and then, you know, we'll kind of shake them apart. But I'm first gonna dredge up my tomatoes, and then we'll do the onions, because the onions I'll kind of do a little bit of a crazy dredge on it. And then we'll start frying them up in batches for it. And
You have a
then-
question? Is that regular white onions?
Yes, these, well, they're yellow onions, so not white onions. But a yellow onion, I like that they're a bit sweeter. They have a nice caramelization, while white onions are a bit more astringent in flavor. But yes, a good yellow or Valdalia, a nice one of those sweet onions that work well for it. Okay, let's start making up our dredge here for it. We're gonna season it up nice, and then we will add some panko breadcrumbs for the second kind of base for it. Since we have a good amount here, I'm gonna put about 2 cups of flour, because we got the tomatoes, maybe a little bit more because I don't want to run low on it. So like 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. And then you want to make sure you season this well, because this is where all the flavor is going to come in. So we're going to do about 2 tablespoons of onion powder. So we're putting the onion powder in the dredge as well. So it's like onion on top of onion for this. And then we're going to add in some Mrs. Dash's original blend. This is Costco's version of it, but it's like the same. And we're going to put about 2 tablespoons of this in here as well. This is just like an everything spice mix, which I think is just lovely. It's salt-free too. And then for our salt, we're not using garlic salt today. We're going to be using Lowry's seasoned salt. So this is delicious salt as well. And we're going to put in about a tablespoon, maybe a little bit more in here, because again, we're going to season up the whole flour mixture. You know, so you want it to be well seasoned, because you don't want a bland onion straw or a bland fried green tomato. So I'm just going to take my fork and mix this up, and then I have 4 eggs, because I think we're going to need that many with the tomatoes and the onions. We're just going to mix this up, and then we'll dredge our tomatoes in this, as well as we'll sprinkle it over our onions. But I'm going to do my tomatoes first, because it is kind of an interesting way that I do my onions when I'm doing kind of my crazy onion strings, just to make it a little bit easier. So let's crack up our eggies here. And then we'll kind of do a quick whisk on them. And then we'll shape, once we get these kind of going and frying, because we're going to have to fry them in batches, then we'll get our burgers up and shaping, but our burgers they aren't going to take too long to cook up. Okay. Let's whisk these together. My son was asking, he's like, oh, are you going to put a fried egg with the burgers today? And I was like, oh, not today. We're going to do onion straws and fried green tomatoes. But he was thinking about a one-eyed Jack, and I was like, that would be pretty delicious. There we go. So just want to make sure you get any of the big egg whites, kind of make sure it's thoroughly mixed in, so it kind of coats everything well. Okay. We don't need this anymore. For our tomatoes, we're going to go in and do our little initial dredge. This is going to allow the second coating to really hold on it. So we're just going to toss it in here, and it's going to stick onto our green tomatoes here. And again, you want to use green tomatoes. You don't want ripe tomatoes, because they're going to be too juicy and you'll never get a good fry. And if you try to fry up a juicy tomato, you're going to burn yourself, because it's going to cause the oil to really pop when you get to frying. And this is perfect because Jack actually had pulled off a tomato today, so I got to use that when he was outside playing. Okay. And then we're going to get our onions. And for this, I really just do a kind of a messy toss in here to just get that initial dredge on it. That's why I always say I'm going to get my tomatoes in there first, because half the time we get some onions left in here. So here's kind of our first initial coating, and this is going to allow that batter to stick on, or the breading to stick on the next time. So again, these are gonna be like, you know, hand-breaded onions, crispy onion straws, not onion rings. Onion rings are like batter dipped, which would mean I would make a wet mixture that I would dip it in, but these, I like to do it this way. And I do battered sometimes when I have like cod. I feel like cod is one where I like to do a battered fry on it. But for this, keep it a little bit more simple. Okay, I'm gonna pick these onions out, and then we're gonna throw in our panko breadcrumbs. Let me go get my hands washed real quick. We'll get our panko breadcrumbs in. We want about a cup of it. And then before I start kind of frying up or mixing that in and then dredging those, I'm gonna get my oil heating up to fry my tomatoes off, and then we'll do our onions. And the reason I'm doing the tomatoes first over the onions is the onions are gonna have lots of little droppings that will kind of muddy the oil for it. And I'm gonna be using a lot of batches, so I'm gonna use a little bit more oil than I normally would do because the onions take a couple batches. Let's start heating it up. I'll start it heating it up on high, and then I'm gonna turn it to low, or not low, to medium for the final, like when we fry it. But I always like my oil nice and hot first. A couple onion pieces that I missed. Okay, just mixing in those breadcrumbs there into it. And now we're gonna go into our egg mixture here. And you can see it's gonna help kind of stick it on, and then we're gonna pat it. Now, there are some people who like to do their fried green tomatoes with a cornmeal. I really prefer just the flour and the panko breadcrumbs. The cornmeal gives you that grittier, more like a southern style, but I really just like the classic for it. I feel like my kids think the cornmeal one's just a little gritty. So we'll get these guys in here. And see, that's why you gotta use the panko, because you get that texture, but it's not quite as firm.
You have a question for people who've never had green tomatoes. Are they sweet or bitter?
They're not bitter, but they're not sweet. So they're really just kind of like a sponge that holds everything in there and firm. It's really a vessel to get the breading. And I'm sure somebody came up with just a crafty way of, I've got tomatoes that never ripened up. Hence, I've got tomatoes right now that aren't ripening up. And they just found a way to use them on there. They get, when you fry them up, they get more, they're not as firm as when they are right now. And they're really lovely, but they're not bitter, because you cook them. So I want to just say they're just a really plain flavor. You don't really get tomato, I'll tell you that. You get fried. Okay, get these guys in here, and then we can do our other ones. But what we'll do is I'm going to coat these up, and then while these are, I'm not going to do my onions yet. I will make up our patties so we can get our first batch of patties cooking, as well as these tomatoes, and then we'll finish off with our onions. There we go. Kind of pat it here. Beautiful. I'm going to just leave that one in there for a second while I dip these two. I've got my fingers are getting quite battered up here. We'll have a good amount. This was 4. I was going through and I was like, which one of these tomatoes are going to be the prime ones to pick? And I picked all the ones that were super heavy, that were like laying close to the ground. I was like, we're gonna pick these, that way my tomato can lift up a little bit higher. Okay, let me get my hands washed up. Since they're nice and coated. And you can even check when we check the oil. I think it still needs a hot minute, but we'll check. Yeah, not quite there yet, but getting there. So I'm not gonna drop them in until it is nice and hot and sizzles with a drop of water. So once that bubble starts to pop off, I'll know that they're ready to put our first ones in. But let's get our burger patties up, shaping up for dinner tonight. So I've got some ground beef in here. I'm not even sure how much. It looks like about 2.5 pounds. We're gonna add about a tablespoon or so of Worcestershire, which is gonna help cut through that fat in the burger and make it nice and juicy and flavorful. My burgers, I don't make them super fancy or dressed up. I like the meat to shine. So Worcestershire and garlic salt is all you need. But you definitely need garlic salt. We're gonna put in a good couple of shakes here because you don't want a bland burger, but you don't need to add so many flavors. And we're just gonna really just kind of smush all of those in here through our hands. Just in, a good squeezing to make sure you get that Worcestershire mixed up in there and that garlic salt mixed up. You could add in pepper if you want. My kids don't like the pepper in it, so I always kind of keep it out. Here we go. And I think it's starting, I can see that drop in there is starting to bubble. So let me wash my hands. We'll get our first batch in and then I will start shaping them up. Okay. Let me grab some tongs. We got some right here. And we're gonna put our first sets in here. I'm gonna turn, I had it heating up on a high. I'm gonna turn it down to a 5. That way we get a nice kind of golden fry on it. But you see, it should always sizzle once you put your whatever you're frying into the oil. If it doesn't sizzle, then it's not hot enough and you're gonna get a soggy fry. There we go. Pop one right here in the middle. And I think I can get one more in here.
Autumn spotted the Labubu.
Oh yes, the Labubu. Evie was obsessed with Labubu, so we had to, which we had ordered off of eBay, and we were not sure if it's the Labubu or the Fufu. It could be either one, but then we spotted a real one in the mall, so now she has 3. And as soon as we got them, does she care about them? No, but we had to have them.
You have a question? Could you use a regular deep fryer for the tomatoes?
Yes, you could definitely do them in a regular deep fryer. You just kind of drop them in and they work just great. I have a deep fryer. I just never use it because it uses up so much oil. And I know you can theoretically keep your oil and use it for other things, but to me, I know they do that at restaurants too, but I don't like that. I think it's different knowing that it's at a restaurant than doing it, but. Okay, we're gonna shape up our patties here, knowing that when you make your burger patties, you're gonna make them bigger and thinner than what you want your OG, what you want it to actually be, because they're going to seize in and shrink in, and so they'll get fatter and smaller. So always make them bigger and flatter. Because otherwise, if you've ever made your burgers and then you always wonder why it looks like a mound, it's because the meat sucks in. It's it cooks out the thing and it retracts. So just smash it down nice and flat.
You had a question? How was the stuffed cabbage?
Oh, it was so good. And this is the best part. My husband, who was not excited about it, he was like, "Oh, you're gonna make it." I'm like, "Oh, I'll make for this." He ate 4 of them. He ate 4 big ones, ate more than anybody else, and he was like, "They're so good." And I was like, "I told you." I mean, he didn't eat the cabbage, but he unrolled them, and I ate the cabbage, and he ate the thing because I love the stewed cabbage part. But they were delicious. Even Teddy loved them. He thought they were the best thing ever. Because I don't remember the last time I made them for her, so they were delicious. And my stepdad was very, very happy. And I always like to make up a bunch of food right before we go out of town, so, he doesn't starve. But
And do you make stuffed peppers?
I do make stuffed peppers. I actually have lots of videos on stuffed peppers. I make a wide variety of stuffed peppers. I either do Italian themed or Mexican themed. Although the next one I want to make is actually, I want to do a ground lamb stuffed pepper because I think that would be amazing. Okay, let's get this. We've got our 7 patties here because we're feeding 7 tonight. Here we go. And then we're going to go check on our home fries in just a second. But I want to flip my tomatoes. I'm going to wash my hands up. We'll see how these guys are cooking. Now the best way I find with flipping, which I think you guys saw us make the donuts earlier today, is use like a slotted spatula and just slide it underneath and then tongs to do the flipping. So we'll get this. Beautiful. So look how these are crisping up nicely.
You have a question? Can you do the tomatoes in the air fryer?
You can do the tomatoes in the air fryer. You're just gonna want to spritz them with a little bit of olive oil spray so you get that good kind of crispiness on it. Otherwise, they'll just be a really dry, crumbly, you know, they won't be as good. So you kind of need to put a little bit of oil in there to get it. Okay, let's see if these guys are ready, if they need a little bit more time. Oh, they are looking good. Beautiful. So what I'm gonna do to keep them warm until we're ready, we're gonna turn off our oven, and then, so the heat is off, I'm gonna bring it down 1 level, and then I'm gonna keep them in there to keep them warm, because they won't continue to cook anymore, but they'll keep them warm, because potatoes, if they get cold, they're just never as good. So that will allow them to stay nice and hot and kind of crispy. Let's get our burgers frying up here. Why am I using oil? Always cook your burgers in butter. Now, I'm not as crazy as Gordon Ramsay is when it comes to his cooking in butter. Apparently, he uses like a whole stick of butter for 1 burger. I think that's a little insane. It's probably the best burger ever. But I think like a tablespoon, maybe 2, is more reasonable than 800 calories worth of butter. But I'm pretty sure that is going to be the best burger ever. I just don't know if I could eat it knowing how much butter was in it.
I could.
Yeah, you probably could. Well, you know, the funny thing is, when I was younger, I made donuts for the very first time. I didn't realize quite, I think I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I was with this daycare that I went to. And we made these, did a campfire donuts, and the daycare teacher, Mrs. Robinson, she got out 9 tubs of Crisco, like those big tubs of Crisco, and she put it in this big Dutch oven that she had over the fire. And we fried our donuts in those 9 tubs. And all I can remember her being like, we don't have enough oil. And we went through, and I just couldn't eat donuts for the longest time because of how much oil was used in the donuts, which I think was insane. And we really didn't have enough. Look at our beautiful fried tomatoes. So we're gonna pop these out on there, but I've got over that. Beautiful. So always put your hot grease side down so that it sucks up and leaves a nice crispy edge on there. You don't want it to leave it with the grease side, you know, up, because then you're just gonna get a soggier fry. Beautiful. Look at that. Lovely. So I'm gonna get my last batch of the tomatoes frying up in here, and then we'll do our onion straws. But these are going to be delicious.
You got a question? How do you keep the breading on them?
So the trick is doing the flour dredge first without the panko in it. Then you go into the egg, and then you go into the second one. And what happens is coating all of it in flour first is going to create, and then it's going to bind with that egg to make like a cooking glue, because you need a little bit of grit to hold it on. And that is going to allow it to stay on. And then the second thing is you don't want to play with your food as you're frying. Put it in there, just flip it once, and I use like my spatula with the tongs to make it nice and simple. That's going to allow it to cook up nicely, and you're not going to pull the breading off. Okay. guy. Oh, so much, I'm gonna have to reshape him. So much for trying to do it with the spatula. Got a little burger for little Jackie. Okay, let me wash my hands.
You have a question? When the tomatoes are done, are they bitter or salty or?
So they're gonna be tender and they're going to taste like the breading. So really this is a glorified way to eat the fried breading. You've got a little bit of a meaty base, but it's kind of like fried eggplant. You don't really taste eggplant because eggplant doesn't have a flavor, but you get that all the good fry flavor to it, which makes it delicious. Okay, I'm gonna turn our burgers down to about a 6, and we're gonna kind of cook it at a nice high temperature 6. We'll flip it on there. While our tomatoes are frying up here, we're gonna do the next part of our dredging. So we got our first part of the onions. You see, this is the dredging, and this is what I tell you is gonna keep that batter sticking on. So we're gonna do our next part, where we're gonna go into the egg, coat it up, and then we're gonna go into our dry batter again, and that's gonna create like a binder on it. And this is why I said it's a bit messy, which is why we do our tomatoes first. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any dredge left for it because it's a little chaotic. It's not a pretty sight, but who wants to spend the time to individually dredge each onion? Not me. Which is why we make onion straws and not onion rings. Okay, so we've kind of got our first one. Now let's get our second batch in here, into the egg. And for this, now when I make my homemade green bean casserole, and I make everything with fresh ingredients like fresh cream of mushroom soup, I make my onion straws fresh. This is my onion straw recipe that I use, and it is a favorite. Nobody in my family liked green bean casserole until I made it one year. And now it's everyone's favorite dish. Well, not everybody's, not my husband's because he doesn't like vegetables, but everybody else in my family absolutely love it. It's one where my niece comes and she's like, "You're making the green bean casserole again, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Of course. It's not Thanksgiving without it." But mine is, again, 100% made from fresh.
You have a question? Can you go over what's in the flour mixture?
Yes. Let me wash my hands, and then I'm going to flip my green tomatoes here. They're getting kind of toasty, and I don't want them to cook up too much. There we go. So the batter, we started out with about 2.5 cups of flour, or 2 1/4 cups of flour. We added in about 2 tablespoons of onion powder, about 2 tablespoons of Mrs. Dash's original blend, and then about 1.5 tablespoons of Lowry seasoned salt. And then we coated all of our onions up with that first, and then after we got the dry kind of dredge on it, the first coating, I added in about 1 cup of panko breadcrumbs to get that extra crunch. And that's kind of, then you dip it in there and you get that second coating. But always have it nice and seasoned up well because you don't want to have a bland onion ring.
Have you posted the recipe for the casserole?
You know what? I do not believe I have. So I will definitely have to do that. Thanksgiving's coming up, so we'll definitely have to make a recipe card and get that for it because it is amazing. I do believe I made it one time on a stream, but I can't remember what. Maybe it was for Easter. I feel like I made it for Easter. I could be. I know. This could also not be true, and I could be making it up. So don't hold me on it. But I may have made it for it, but I may not have. So we'll have to see. I've got our burgers here flipped. We're gonna cook it up, and then we'll add our cheese on for these, and then we'll pull them off and let them sit on it, and then we'll start dropping in our onions as we kind of get down. I'm gonna get a little bit because I'm thirsty. Okay. Let's check out here. Our dog apparently might be a little bit thirsty too. I don't know if anybody else has short-snouted dogs, but when they get a little hairball stuck, they sound like an old man clearing their throat. And that's Loki over there. He's alive and well, but clearing his throat. There we go. These are looking pretty good. So I think we'll start taking them off, and then we'll start dropping in.
Did you ever request to do a cream of mushroom soup soon?
Oh, yes. I do have a delicious mushroom. I always call it my wild mushroom soup. Now, mine is not going to be thick and gelatinous like a can. It's going to be more creamy and broth-like, but delicious. Okay, now we've got all of our fried green tomatoes out. We're going to take our onion straws here. Now, the trick is not to put too many onion straws in at a time. I'm going to toss them here, get this kind of good coating on it, and we're going to drop them in, and I'm going to just kind of spread them out a little bit because they do need a little bit of space to get that good crisp up. If I drop a whole bunch in at one time, they're not going to get a really good crisping on it. Okay, I think get this last little batch right over here. And then our burgers are looking pretty good here. I'm going to put my cheese on it, and then we'll pull them off, and I just let that cheese naturally melt with the residual heat on there. So we'll get cheese on it for some. I do have a couple crazy kids who are not cheese fans, so I'll make sure I leave one without. And guess, if you can guess which one of my kids does not want cheese on the burger, you'll probably guess right. Easy. He's my one kid who is very different from all of my other kids when it comes to flavor profiles and what food she likes. And I'm not sure she likes any food. Okay, get this guy down. Let's get our next set of burgers in. And those will just sit and kind of, that cheese will slowly melt through that residual heat on there. Beautiful. Get these guys, and then I have enough room to slide my little baby one in. I'm going to do them right over here. Perfect. Now, when you're making burgers, I'll leave it right here, don't use lean meat. Lean meat is going to give you a tough, dry burger. You've got to use at least like 80-20, 78-82, or 78-22 is a little bit better, or 76-24. The leaner it is, the tougher it's going to be. So burgers, you don't have to go as crazy as Gordon Ramsay and add a whole stick in. Just get a slightly higher fat content. It's going to give you a better burger, because if you're going to eat a burger, eat it right on there. You'll thank me on it. I always feel like some of the, I think it's like Laura's lean ground beef. Great for tacos or something like that, but not great for a burger. Let's check how these guys are. A little bit longer. You can start to see they're a little bit golden. With these, I find it's easier. We're going to do like a full flip on them versus like trying to individually move them around for it. Okay. Well, why don't I will clear this out now. And we can actually cut up our pineapple while we're waiting, because my pineapple is ready to be cut up, and we'll have that as our fruit tonight. I wasn't sure whether we were going to do strawberries or pineapple, but I have time to cut up our pineapple. So when you buy a pineapple from the store, it is 99% of the time never ready to cut up. And so I always leave it on my counter for about 4 or 5 days until it goes from being like bright green to more of a goldish color, where that bottom is even, and it's going to get more gold from the bottom up. But that's when you're going to know this nice gold color right here is when you're going to know when it's nice and ready.
You have a question? Are you going to be going live while on vacation?
We are going to go live on vacation. We're going to do Sunday night. I will cook dinner because we'll be at the campsite early enough and we'll still have light. So I'm going to actually be making steaks and potato dinner on the grill. So we'll stream that one. And then we're going to do our breakfasts because we'll have the light in the morning. But the rest of it, so we're just going to do kind of one stream a day because then we'll be out pretty late at night And when we get back to our campsite, it's gonna be dark, so we're just gonna eat out while we're on vacation on there, because we're going to Dollywood and Anakeesta and all that fun stuff. So we will, but we'll be doing breakfasts. And I already got my slate. I'm gonna do a big pancake, kind of like a lumberjack pancake breakfast, French toast, and campfire donuts. So lots of good stuff. We're gonna cut off our little middle piece. This is how you get rid of the core, is you just cut yours into fourths and you cut off that tip of that triangle. And then you'll have like the fourth, like that hard part out. Okay, let's get these guys flipped. So you can see we've got this nice kind of lovely golden brown. And we'll fry it over. It doesn't take as long to fry it on the second side as it does on the first. So these will just be in here for another minute or two, and then we'll have our first batch kind of done. But look how delicious these are going to be. Okay, let's check. These are looking good for it. I'm gonna turn it up to about a 6. Let it cook a little bit there. And then again, we do have our home fries staying nice and warm in the oven, which we'll grab those out and just right before we serve. Now, I always say, people are always find cutting up pineapple like a daunting task. Once you know how to cut up your pineapple, it's really easy. So you cut the top and the bottom off, because you've got to have a nice level surface to work with. Otherwise, it's really hard to manage. And then after you cut it into fourths, you're going to cut the little triangle off, so you kind of make a trapezoid here. And then what I do is I cut that fourth down in half, so now you've got it like your eighths. And then you're just going to slice along the side, and it's a pretty easy straight cut. So it's not like you have to arc your blade at all. And it's just really easy to then get just that nice tender bit of that pineapple out. You get a lot more than what you get from the store for a fraction of the cost, because you can buy a whole pineapple for about $3, and you can't get this much pineapple from the store cut up. They charge you an arm and a leg for it. Just remember though, when you buy your pineapple at the store, most of the time it is underripe and it needs to sit on your counter for a couple of days before it's ready to get cut up, or you're gonna have a really pale and bitter pineapple. Go. And you can cut your pineapple. Like for me, it takes less than 5 minutes to cut up a pineapple, and that 5 minutes saves me $5 because my kids love pineapple. And by cutting it up, I don't have to spend $10 on it. I can spend $3. Okay, we got our pineapple done. Let's look in there. Let's put those guys over. Beautiful. Now, for smash burgers, which are really, really thin, you know, they'll smash it down. When you have your big burgers like this, don't push them down. What happens when you do that is you're pushing out all of the juices, and that's going to give you a drier burger. So really keep those in there, because it's going to keep it nice and tender and wonderful. Okay. This first batch is just about to come out, so I'm going to move all of my fried green tomatoes over to one side so I have a nice little batch for it. But these are, just look how beautiful they are. Really excited for them.
What temperature do you cook the burgers to?
The burgers, I have them cooking at a 6. So I did warm up my pan with the butter in it.
No, like medium
Oh,
well.
I like my burgers to be at about a medium rare to a medium. On there. I don't like them overdone because I feel like they get too dried out that way and tough. But nice little bit of pink in the middle for it, which makes some things. Now, that's the difference is a smash burger. When you cook a smash burger, those are always going to be closer to a medium because they're so thin. You're getting that quick sear on both sides, but that keeps it nice and juicy still. Okay, we've got our first batch of our onion straws out, and they are looking delicious. And these, I will say, my kids just love to just eat them. I always say I make these at Thanksgiving to go with my green bean casserole. And we're a big family at Thanksgiving because, you know, I have all of my siblings and their kids there. So it's about 40 people that we're cooking for. And so when I'm making it, I do probably like 10 plus onions. So this is 1.5 onions. And I do about 10 onions worth of onion straws, knowing that about half of them are gonna get eaten before they can even make it to the casserole. Because you know what they do is, my nieces and nephews, my kids, my husband, my siblings walk by, take one, and you know, it's how they disappear. It's like cookies sometimes when I do my little Christmas cookie marathon, and I'll have them out, batch, and I swear my counter just disappears. The cookies just disappear off of them. Okay, we've got that last little batch here. Slide this right over here. Since we're done with that. Our burgers, beautiful. Perfect. I'm going to turn this guy off. We'll put our cheese on. I just got to make sure I'm going to leave 2 cheeseless on there because Teddy sometimes doesn't want cheese on his burger. Sometimes he does. Let's get this cleaned up. We'll get our home fries and we should be able to serve up our first patty or so for you guys. We'll make you guys sit through the entire second batch of frying when everything else is pretty much done here. Okay, let me get this cleaned up and then we'll go to the oven and we're gonna grab out our home fries. But let me first take our burgers out of the pan here. I always like to put the cheese on in the pan for just a few seconds because you've got that residual steam come around. But do you see how we've got this it melts over it just beautifully? Beautiful. And now, let's get our second 2 patties. I'm gonna get another plate for it because my kids, I can just hear Evie saying, but there's cheese on my burger. And I will say, if cheese like you go to a restaurant and she always is like, can I have a hamburger? And I always make sure to be like, without cheese, don't put the cheese on it. Because without fail, they always put cheese on it. And it's really hard to get cheese that is melted on your burger off. Okay, let's go grab those home fries out of the oven that we had, keeping it nice and warm and toasty in there. So we turned off the oven, but we have that nice residual heat that will keep them beautiful. We've got this nice golden brown on them. And remember, we coated them with our Lowry seasoned salt, and we've got this almost like crispy breaded, cooking on it, which is beautiful. And you don't want to take your home fries out like too early because then you know how potatoes are. They always get a little bit firmed up, but these are just beautiful. So just slide under, but look at this just golden crispy edge on there. That's why we cook them right down on the metal pan instead of putting a parchment paper out. These are perfect. And I said you can't beat this just golden brown fry on there. And that's what you get, honestly, is the mixture of the oil, the flour, and the onion powder, because the onion powder has a little bit of a sugar in it, that natural sugar, which helps give you that golden thing. And plus the paprika and the Lowry seasoned salt.
What brand is that pan?
This is our Nordic Ware Big Sheet. So it's like the big baking sheet, which is the extra one. I do have it in my Amazon storefront, and that link's on my page. I love it because it fits the whole oven. And when you have like a regular baking sheet like this that doesn't fit the whole oven, you're just having wasted space. Let's get these flipped over. Now, this is just a simple kind of batch and a half. We did our tomatoes in it. If you ever have to do a really large batch of the onion straws, you might want to do it in 2 pans, or you're going to have to switch your oil halfway through because you do lose a bit of the breading. Not too terrible amount, but after about 2 or 3 fries, like batches of frying, any drippings will get really dark and then they will kind of cling onto it. So kind of make it through, but When I do my like really big one at Thanksgiving, I have to do it in, like I switch my oil so I don't have burnt bits in it. Okay, well guys, let's get ready to serve up our dinner over here. Let me grab this, I'm gonna get my bun. And switch this sideways so I have a little bit more space. Beautiful. We're going to use a little brioche bun. You know, I was thinking about making pretzel buns because those are one of my favorite buns for a burger, but we made enough today. Okay, so I've got my brioche here. Let me grab my patty over here. Let's grab you. You look good. Okay, so we've got our beef hamburger here that we seasoned up with Worcestershire and garlic salt. And then we're going to top it with our fried green tomato and a good helping of our crispy onion straws, which is going to be fantastic on our burger. And then as our side, we have our nice and kind of battered home fries with Lowry seasoned salt and panko breadcrumbs for that extra crunch. And then of course, you get an extra serving of the onion straws because they're fantastic and delicious. And then we'll have our fresh pineapple for our food tonight. Well guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can go to that link and search for what we made. So we've got our burgers with fried green tomatoes and our onion straws, and you can watch and cook along with us again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my big sheets in there. I've got my Hexclad pans, just all the different things that I use in my kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.